Discovery.
3, 2, 1, 0, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast about other podcasts, where every single week we have a book club style discussion about podcasts. And at the end of the episode, we're going to have a brand new recommendation. And we'll talk about that one next week. I'm Kirk.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Matt.
And this week we are talking about Not Past It, the episode about the LSD No-Hitter. What did you guys think about the show in general?
I really like this show. In general, I think that I kind of am drawn to shows where they go to like kind of alternate history stuff, you know, things that aren't necessarily like, you're not going to read about this in high school. They don't want to incentivize that in any way. But it's crazy to me that this even happened. There's a lot of stuff throughout this that made it crazier. I love kind of how the storytelling was great, how they like kind of unfolded the story of Doc Ellis was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. The production value was really awesome. It was like, they just really formatted it really nicely. Was starting with that archival footage and like the narration of it. And it's like, sounded pretty cool. Set you there real quick.
Yeah, I love that they went and got the audio from the game as he was throwing it.
Yeah.
And the announcers are just like, oh, he's got to know that he's throwing a no-hitter. But like, I don't, but then you're like, I don't know that he did, honestly.
So
yeah,
great.
I don't know if he did either. from his telling, which was great. I thought that was really cool that they had archival interview stuff in it. You know, it made it feel, and the way that they reported it, you almost didn't feel like it was just clips. It felt like it was part of the show, which, you know, of course they gave credit where it belonged, because it was the Weekend America, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds like an interesting, weekend show, probably in America.
That'd be my guess.
It's a good guess. It's a good guess.
It's actually
that's just a guess. I have a sixth sense about things like this.
No, it's
Quite a
actually
hunch.
public television in Kazakhstan. They just really wanted to go with a different title for it.
Yeah. Well, America translates as Kazakhstan in Kazakhstani.
Oh, I bet it does.
Which is weird.
So I actually heard this show Not Past It because it was a whole episode was played on the feed of Reply All, because it's a Gimlet show.
Oh, okay.
And they were specifically doing I think I talked to you a little bit about it, because it was fascinating. It was fascinating, but it was the story about the Paris Hilton sex tape, because there was a lot of stuff to that I had no idea about. Yeah. But I didn't quite feel comfortable having us give our opinions on Paris Hilton's sex tape.
No,
So I
'cause-
picked a different episode to talk about.
I mean, you know how we are. We have to see the source material. Like, we can't have a discussion about something unless we can actually discuss it. So it might be an awkward situation for everybody to listen to that conversation we had.
Man, well, you know, I'm probably going to listen back.
They did do another episode about the rating system, like in movies, and I really liked that one.
There's
That's
some really interesting stuff there. Because you look at like Golden Age Hollywood with like pre-code and stuff, there was a lot of weird politics and shenanigans with it. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah,
But
well,
back
I
to
enjoyed it.
the no-no.
I love that it's called that, the no-no. They said, hey, you're pitching a no-no. And it was like, what in the world? I just can't picture a team of baseball players being like, you got a no-no.
No, and I mean, they might say that, but if they said during the game, I'm surprised that kid didn't get punched in the head.
Right?
They talk about it in the episode where you're not supposed to talk about it while it's happening.
Right.
You're supposed to pretend it's not so they can stay. But baseball is the most superstitious out of any sport I can think of. Every time they stand up, you can see them doing like 12 different like little rituals. They like touch their necklace and then touch the bat 6 different times in different ways and like do a little spin with it. And if they don't do that, they're gonna be like, wait, I need to do that again.
It is really weird. But I really found it fascinating, just Doc Ellis's story in general. The fact that like he was a very regular drug user. Like it wasn't like a one-time thing that he did with some buddies that led to the LSD. No, he was a functioning drug addict, essentially.
Yeah.
And they said he said that he started using drugs at the age of 13. It's pretty young. And that he was. I love how he had a lady in the stands that was like at every game that was just give him speed during the game.
Somebody had to have seen that. Somebody had to see him like run off to the side, eat something, and then come back in. That's not that subtle. During a baseball game,
give it some popcorn.
Yeah, I guess it's like, don't worry about it. No, but it sounds like his teammates knew about it. But yeah, it definitely sounded like to me that he was on a lot of drugs at the time. And so that was kind of the normal assortment. And so he signed with the Pirates. I think that he was only in the farm league for a little bit of time before he got called up. He did pretty well and got called up. And then it pretty quickly got to the day, the magical day for Doc Ellis. And one of my favorite parts of this was he wasn't like, he didn't think he was supposed to be there. He said that he like had a rest day. So he went home and he was just doing tons of acid. And he was just like laying around and just tripping, I guess. And so he, I guess, woke up and he did some more. And then somebody calls like, you're supposed to pitch. He's like, no, it's
that's
Thursday.
Tomorrow.
And they're like, wait, what happened to yesterday? And so he was just wrecked and had to do everything that he was supposed to do on normal game day while wrecked out of his mind.
So crazy.
But yeah, he basically said that he like went down and because he had to grab a quick flight, he had to get there, he had to warm up. And apparently when he was warming up, he was so loaded at the time that somebody was like, man, you need to go do something about something. You need to figure something out because this is a problem. I think because you just imagine he was talking about while he was pitching, sometimes the pitches would look like a balloon, like the ball would look like a balloon. Sometimes it would look like it was tiny. And I don't know if the full footage of this game is available, but I would love to watch it because he also mentions at some point he gets somebody out at first and he yelled touchdown when he did.
and it's also even funnier to me that like he didn't hit a no-hitter where it was all strikes. He was throwing the ball everywhere.
Yeah, no, it was not a perfect
there
game.
Was multiple
even a
times
bit.
Where he had the bases loaded because there was so many foul balls that he would throw, and he was like hitting players and stuff.
Yeah,
but they weren't getting the hit.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the distinction is a perfect game means nobody gets on base. Nothing happens. Complete shutdown from the pitcher. A no-hitter, you can walk people, you can hit them with a pitch, and you could also have like an error in the outfield. So if somebody misses a catch, that also could be like a person on base without a hit. And so it sounds like all of these things happened. He said that there was multiple times where he had bases loaded. And I really want to see how he's doing it because, yeah, you wonder if some of these pitches are all over the place. And that's why nobody could hit well because he was throwing like a crazy person and nobody knew what he was going to do next.
Well, that's what that person who came on was like, yeah, the whole thing about hitting pitches is patterns. You learn patterns and then he had no patterns. If he thought it was a balloon one time, he probably it's just insane. So yeah, it must have been impossible to hit whatever he threw.
I think it's hilarious that he did wait for 10 years to tell anybody that he was on LSD during this no-hitter.
Yeah, and I get that because I mean, I don't know. It sounds like he was part of the first game where two black athletes were the two starting pitchers. So he was right in the time where like you don't want to just bring anything out. You want to just that happened. I threw the no-hitter. Don't even worry about it. But then once he was retired and I mean, spoiler alert, the story ends great. He does end up going through recovery and becoming sober, and beyond that, he's a counselor. But it sounds like once he started to clean up, he's like, okay, we can talk about it. And so he then went and told apparently a large publication, Weekend America, and everyone then knew that there was an LSD no-hitter, which I'm sure baseball did not want people to know about.
Probably not.
Like, there's no,
namely the players.
yeah, there's no way they wanted that. But I bet there was like some of those guys that after he said that, like, yeah, I knew it. There's no way that guy was messed up.
Yeah, but he was also known as the first militant of professional baseball because he was so outspoken about, racial rights and stuff like that in a time. And that was interesting. I had never really thought about it in a time where that wasn't a thing yet. If you were a black professional athlete, you didn't buck the system because you knew that, the system was against you. So you were lucky to even be there.
And you see the same type of thing with Muhammad Ali as well.
Yeah.
So
they mentioned that during this time, it was just like Muhammad Ali and like him. And that was like the only people that were being kind of standing up to power in that way.
That's great. Muhammad Ali was anti-Vietnam War, and people were like calling him a draft dodger and saying that he was like a traitor and things like that. And it's like, looking back on the Vietnam War now, I think there's mixed opinions on the Vietnam War in general. So I think there was a lot of really loaded attitudes toward like black athletes. And so I think there was extreme courage in any of them that were going forward and like just talking about social issues, because people tried to just rake them over the coals as soon as this happened. They would try and ruin their careers.
And he did sound like just so badass in the way that he did it. They talked about a game that he pitched where the crowd had gotten really, really nasty, was saying a bunch of racial stuff. And he threw the last strike that won the game. And then he just stands on the mound and flicks off the audience in the circle.
360 middle finger. It's pretty legendary.
That's amazing.
360.
So, no, he seriously sounded like a badass, like the whole time, even through his crazy, drug-induced career of sports. It was really fascinating to hear. David Nutt was the guy's name that was the one that studies LSD and its effects. And it was fascinating to hear his take on why it worked. Why Doc Ellis was able to throw a no-hitter while on LSD.
My
For
favorite.
one, he said that there's no way that he would have even wanted to throw the ball if he didn't have the speed.
That is my favorite part, is like 100% he would just like laid down if he didn't have the speed too.
So it was the combination of the LSD and the speed that helped him to throw the no-hitter.
It's just insane.
The psychology behind the reason that he was able to do it was most likely because he had no fear of failure. It was fascinating.
And that's where that's one of the things I really liked about this show, is the whole time it's like kind of this insane story that somebody's on this level of drugs and able to not only complete a game. That's the thing, is like, you would think, okay, even being able to go out and play a professional game, you're like, wow, that's amazing. But not only did he do that, he hit like the second tier of perfection for a pitcher, so right under the best you could possibly do, he hit that while doing this. But then they dig into, here's why it kind of fit him and it fit his traumas. And it was something that he had been dealing with and kind of came to a head in this moment where because he even, once he said that, they cut back to a clip of Doc Ellis saying he was always afraid. Mm-hmm. He was always afraid of like not performing well enough. And so then you take into account that this would make it so he would be able to just go and to just kind of reach that flow state and just play. And you're like, oh, that's it. I don't know. It was a really interesting thing to kind of bring in the mental health aspect of it that kind of further explains the man. It explains why this was his journey.
Yeah. It's like alcohol being the social lubrication. It's that awesome moment of like, just enough. Although it sounds like he had a little more than just enough.
I think so.
But the sense of like just enough to get over that mental block, And I love that the speed, he had more than enough, but the speed brought his body back to just enough. So he could just do it without thinking.
Yeah, he got his brain there. He just needed to get his body locked in.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah, that's a very fascinating one. Have you ever had any moments of like when, I don't know about hard drugs or tripping or whatever, but like when you definitely wouldn't have been able to do something without, say, alcohol or whatever? So I feel like I usually have 2 or 3 beers before I do any comedy thing anymore.
Just to like calm the nerves a little.
Yeah, but just to get in this frame of mind that like you can just get out of your brain a little bit easier. It's not like I can't without it, but with it, it's just like so helpful.
I think that early on in the podcast, we definitely
I was literally about to say
use that as the because heck, when we first started, we were so nervous to talk. We hated hearing our own voices. It was, it was just a whole thing, and you could feel it. You could feel it by listening to it. Tell you what, it didn't feel that way, and you couldn't hear it if we were all just a little bit tipsy. So it made it a lot easier, especially early on. I feel like that's not so much a thing anymore, especially when we started live streaming and stuff.
So, nobody wanted to see the live streams when we were doing that.
No, they were about 6 to 7 hours of recording.
It was
an hour or 2 of content.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was more just like we would kind of sit down and have a drink and then start talking and kind of like loosen up, and so that I totally like relate to, of kind of like just loosening up a little bit, kind of getting in the flow of things, and then it takes over. Because at least for me, whenever you kind of get in something, all the fear of it is gone.
Yeah.
It's to me, it was always the lead up is where the fear was, because you're just thinking about, what all could go wrong. But then once you're in it, if it goes wrong, there's no stopping it now. This train's rolling.
Right. Well, and Doc Ellis was pretty young at this time, wasn't he? Like, yeah. So I feel like there's this natural progression of where it's like it is helpful early on, but now, for example, the podcast, you guys obviously aren't drunk. It's 1:30.
Speak for yourself. I'm
you
just
don't know.
kidding.
But like you reach this point where it's like, what, 5 years in, you're like, we don't need to do that. We know how to do it. We got over that hump of the loosening up moment, and I feel like that's where everybody's destined towards if they keep doing it.
Yeah. But I definitely relate to it. And then maybe my favorite part of this episode is the second act of Doc Ellis, because he became, if he was awesome before, he became even more awesome. He got sober, and he was looking for ways that he could talk to other athletes who have had similar problems. And by the way, I looked this up because there was one immediately that popped in my head when I was thinking about it, is like athletes who performed at a high level while on drugs. And the one that popped into my head was Andre Agassi, famous tennis player, said that he did meth multiple times before playing in like opens and like won.
Whoa.
And so it's like, whoa, okay, I guess that makes sense, because it's kind of the same thing, super stimulant, like that type of stuff. But the vast majority of them are like weed. They talked about like Michael Phelps like smoked weed. It's like, okay, that's not the same thing. I'm talking about something where like we're talking about something like really heavy like this, but there wasn't a lot of great information, because most of the time, and the thing is, I don't at all want it to seem like it's like, it's funny that people have drug dependencies, because, it's a mental health thing. It's something that we could do more in this country to try and help people through this. But it's just interesting to see people that are able to perform or compete at that really high level. You think of the old jazz guys that were all like doing heroin, but then playing performances that would forever change music in general and like cement them as legends in a genre that still haven't been surpassed. And they were like extremely and actively addicted to heroin at the time. People like Miles Davis, I don't think he lived past like 40. And so it's just this weird combination of things where something so bad is happening to them, but at the same time, they're able to do something so like amazing. But Doc Ellis got sober and was looking for people that he could talk to about kind of his experience and what he was going through, and he couldn't find any, so he made one. He made a place where athletes who were dealing with substance issues could talk about that, could like go through that, and he would go out of his way to work with them. We have in our notes, I called it the Doc Tale, but
they called it that too.
He
didn't
called
they?
it the Doc Cocktail, but Doc Tale is way better.
You're
way
right.
better.
That is better.
Cocktail.
But yeah, if you want to hear his virgin cocktail that he would have when he was out, so that he could socialize with people and hang out and be a part of it, but then still maintain his sobriety, it was orange juice, pineapple juice, coconut cream, and grenadine. Sounds like a tropical treat.
Yeah,
pina colada kind of thing. Yum.
I bet you it was pretty good.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you put rum in it, it's a pina colada. I think it's probably great.
It's basically a painkiller without the alcohol.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a really good episode specifically to talk about. I thought it was a crazy story, but then the way that they covered it, I thought was great. I was debating on whether this one or the one about ratings on movies and stuff, but I thought this was a crazy story and I wanted to talk about it. I'm glad you guys liked it too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I really did.
And it was always something that I'd heard about, but never really heard about this story.
You know what? I think that's part of what I really like about these kinds of shows. And it's the same thing. We've talked about it a lot in the different types of discoveries we do, both of our shows, actually all three of our shows, really.
Yeah.
You hear surface level about something. You know, you hear here's a quick snippet about a person, but you have no idea the nuance of that person until you really dive in. And that is the great thing about podcasts, because any random category people can dig in on, you can go find that show. Yeah. There's pretty much anything you could be looking for, and like a deep dive about a subject, you can find that. And so it's really interesting to me.
It's like the stupid ad campaign that was going on. There's an app for that. You know, now it's like there's a podcast for that.
Oh, there's definitely a podcast.
Whatever it is, there's a podcast for it. Trust me.
I wonder. I haven't ever seen it, but was there podcast growth in 2020, even though nobody was listening to them? Like you could record them.
You're talking about output.
Yes,
growth.
About people starting podcasts.
I bet so. I bet 1,000%. There's no way there wasn't.
I don't know how I can ever find out, so it might just be a question for the rest of our lives. But I feel like there was more podcasts made, during the pandemic.
I agree.
Well, all right. I do have a recommendation for next week, and this one is called Spilled Milk. And this is they're kind of right in our wheelhouse. They have some discovery type stuff going on. They talk about usually a food topic. They're both travel writers and comedians. But yeah, the episode we're going to talk about is episode 529. What's in your freezer?
Ooh, I'm excited to talk about what's in my freezer.
Me too. So everybody look what's in there. You got to go dig in, find the stuff in the back that smells really weird now. You got to find out what it is, and we're going to talk about that next week.
Awesome.
And more stuff too, probably.
No,
but we're at least going to talk about that.
We're at least just going to list what's in our freezer.
We're all going to live stream.
Something to look forward to.
That's the real shame of it. We have to show people what it looks like in there.
I'm going to give you a little teaser. I got some ice in there. Yeah. Well, and remember,
there's always more to discover.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.